Hello everybody, this is Dana with the Freedom Please channel and essenceofme.com. I'm coming to you all today with another installment of the Dream Chasing series. Today I'm going to talk about giving yourself permission, and specifically there are some permissions that I believe that you need to give yourself in order to experience whether it's your best year or your best month or your best life, and you can fill in the blank. I'm also going to do somewhat like a B-side. You know how there used to be tapes and records that had an A-side and a B-side. And the B-side is coming to you based on a request from a subby to talk about time management. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about some of the permissions that you need to give yourself in order to chase this dream. So if you are wanting to stay along for this chat to hear what I have to say, I'm going to tell you all now. And if you are one of my crafters, go ahead, hit pause, and I will stay right here waiting on you. You can get your project, you can get your coffee or your tea, but we're going to get it in on the other side of this introduction. So stick around if you want to hear more. If not, I will hopefully see you sooner than later. For everybody else, let's get it. Okay, we are getting better at the introductions. Here we go. So today was kind of one of the videos that I wanted to talk about from the beginning, which is, it didn't start off as being permissions. What it started off with is me thinking about how you lose your way. And I thought about the GPS system, the global positioning system. And so I did some research on it, and I didn't know what I didn't know about the whole GPS system, and that it's this government satellite. But the point of it is that these satellites align, and it helps to give a pinpoint location of where you are. And I was reading on to, and it talked about how you cannot be found by the GPS system, or how the GPS system can be wrong, and things that can get in the way of that satellite accurately telling you or zeroing in on where you are based on the device that you're using. And it seems like a lot when it comes to dream chasing, but it really isn't. So stick with me a little bit. I'm not gonna like bore you to death with technical stuff, but it really got my brain to thinking and stirring and turning. So before I get into that, I'm going to show you all what I'm working on. You all know I cannot talk and craft at the same time. And actually I can when I'm crocheting, but you would see the top of my head, and that wouldn't be very nice. But I'm going to show you what I'm working on. And today I'm actually crocheting. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen this before. Oh no, don't want to lose my stitch. Excuse me. And here it is. It is a granny rectangle. I am using the some of the leftover yarn that I had from the How About Them Cowboys set. I'm going to bring it a little closer. This is actually, they consider it, I believe it's Aran. It's like an off-white. And here is I actually have a navy blue, and then I have this blue, which is called Cape Cod blue. Cape Cod blue. And then I also have some of that that heather gray. And so right now I am doing somewhat of, not a pattern like following a pattern, but a pattern as far as the sequence of the colors. And so that's what I'm working on now. And here's what I have so far. In the middle here is where I began with the off-white, and so on and so forth. As I moved out, you'll see the navy blues here, and it's hard to see because of my background. but it's one row. Then there was the off-white, and then there's two of the Cape Cod blue, and then there was one, and then there's the gray. And I'm starting to follow that same pattern going out, but increasing the stitch count. I mean the row count per color. So that's what I'm working on. I'll be working on this for a long time. This is a blanket, so I'm not in a rush. It's one of those pieces that I work on in my quiet time when I don't want to have to think, and I don't have to follow a pattern. It just is. So if you all want to know more about that, let me know. It's really easy and straightforward, but I just wanted to make this. And this is for someone, but there's no rush because they don't know about it. So now to our dream chasing conversation. Now, I will be looking down a little bit because I did kind of capture a few notes for myself. But I kind of want to talk about this. I am going to end this talking a little bit about time management. I am not going to by far profess myself to be a pro when it comes to time management. I'm going to tell you what I do. I'm going to tell you what I've tried and why I changed some of that. And none of that is, of course, is not scripted, but I think especially when you get into the new year and there are new habits that you wish to establish in your life, time management is key because usually we're either adding in something, taking away something, and what you did before, your old habits, usually override you trying to establish those new habits, especially after the newness wears off. I mean, we're almost, I mean, I think today's the 10th. So we're almost at the middle of January already. So usually the newness of, the New Year's resolutions and these new things can sometimes wear off once you get into, the latter part of the month and the beginning of February. So I think having some sort of time management plan is so important to help you be successful in establishing those new habits. So we're going to talk about that. Also, you're going to see potentially in the title of this video that I'm gonna title this video Die Empty, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's kind of drastic, but it's not. And if I'm not able to wrap this up in a pretty little bow, then it may not be titled that, and you'll just have to edit this part out. So I believe that every person can find their way either getting back on track, and that's where the GPS thing was, back aligned with your system, back on either on track, or even placing yourself in a new place and a new position by giving yourself these 4 permissions. And really what I believe these permissions are acts of love. And they're acts of love, but they're acts of self-love to me. And in some ways, this may seem a teensy-weensy bit selfish, but I'm going to leave it there. If it feels that way to you at first, it may be because it's uncomfortable and you're not used to doing it. And it may sound like it because I'm saying about yourself, but sometimes we do a really poor job on loving on ourselves because we're constantly throwing it out. And there's other times we're loving on ourselves a little too much. And I'm not talking about that type, where we're doing it at the expense of other people or being inconsiderate. But that's not the type of self-love that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the permissions that you need to give yourself, especially in this time of going from where you were or where you are to where you want to be and where you desire to be. Okay? So the first permission that I believe that you should do is give yourself permission to have this experience. You have to say no to the good in order to say yes to great. So give yourself permission and leeway to have whatever this experience may be, because you don't know. I mean, we can write plans and we can do all the things that we've talked about in the other videos. We talked about going from dreams to goals, and we talked about saying no. Well, all of this really is about giving yourself permission to have this experience, and more so not focusing on the results, but focusing on what you need to do or what you believe you need to do to put yourself in the best possible situation, to create your environment of yes, and to create an environment of success. And so part of that is giving yourself permission to have this experience, okay? And with that, I was thinking about last year. And last year, I accomplished a goal that I wanted to do it for years. If I told you how long I wanted to do it, I would seem like such a bum. So I'm not going to do that to myself. But I wanted to do it for so long. I wanted to hold a retreat for so long, so many years. And I wrote it down, and looking at it on that piece of paper, I wrote it out in hand, and then I typed it up, and then I put it on my blog, and it just kept like haunting me. It was there, it was there, it was there. And part of that, I'm going to tell you what I did. I prayed about it, and I prayed about it. And one of the prayers that I had was, I prayed that that God would be very, very clear as far as the direction that I needed to go. That I didn't want to have so many options that I would be confused. I mean, location, what to do for content, none of that. I really was just placing it at his feet and saying, Lord, I'm just going to be obedient. And it was amazing to me how I started calling locations, and literally they had one day available. And I would do, look at some different options for printing options, and it was only one available. I mean, it was all these different things. And I was like, why does it always seem to be yes or no? Totally forgetting that I prayed that God would make it extremely clear. And he did. And so, as a part of that, I really had to give myself permission to experience that retreat, and not just to get it done. I then went beyond just, okay, I'm just going to get it done so I can get it out of my head, so I can be obedient. And I took it to the next level in that I want this to be all that I envisioned it to be. I mean, in my mind, I saw it so clear. I felt what I wanted people to feel. I saw what I wanted people to see. I mean, even down to the food, and not just like a particular food, but I wanted, for example, if they were a mother, I wanted them to come and not have to worry about what am I going to eat. How many times have you gone to an event and you go to a conference and they don't supply the meals? So then you have to decide, well, where am I going to go? Am I going to drive? Am I going to go to the cafe? Am I going to order from room service? Am I going to do takeout? And all of that occupies your brain, and it totally distracts you from the experience. And I did not want that to be an issue. And so it was little stuff like that that to me seemed so small, but it was really high on my priority list when it came to the experience that I wanted the participants to have at the retreat. And so once I stepped up to the plate, I didn't just want to be there. I wanted to experience it and just go all out. So I would just know that when I looked back on it, I did everything that I could have possibly done in that moment to make that experience what it was. And I did. And it was a wonderful thing. So the first thing that you're going to do is give yourself permission to have that experience. And the last part of that is because when you give yourself permission, you're also giving your mind permission to change its perspective. And that's huge, because the reality is we can say, okay, Dana, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all out. I'm going to, 100 miles an hour. But 30 seconds later, 1 minute later, in the natural, nothing has changed. The only thing that changed was my mind. And so you're giving yourself permission to have the experience, but you're giving yourself permission to also change your perspective and to allow new things to come with making this decision, okay? Number 2, give yourself permission to not only experience and release the process of transformation. And that goes with the perspective change. And what I mean by the transformation is when you decide you're going to change some things, usually that means you're opening your hands to receive something new. But when you open your hands, it usually means you have to let go of what you are holding on to, right? It's, and to me, when you give yourself permission to take process in that transformation, to experience that transformation process, to go from the old to the new, to metamorph into something different, I think you got to be very open to that, because that may mean I've got to let some friendships go. And with that transformation and that change may come grieving. There may come issues with separation. There may come times where I take a step forward, but I take two steps back. And that's a part of the permission process of experiencing also that transformation. Not just the experience of this high, of reaching this goal, but also to experience that transformation and those changes that may come about in your life because you've done number one. Okay? And it'll be a time that you may grieve, you may mourn, you may have new highs, you may have new friendships. You may need to learn new skills. You may go from being a teacher to being a student. You may go from a student to being a teacher. It can be so many wonderful things. But I think you have to just keep your eyes open, and you've got to, again, that's why this is a permission. It's like an opening of your heart to what can happen and what can take place, because you are giving yourself permission and you're allowing this to enter into your life. Okay. In this vein, one of the biggest transformations that I've had that I can think of, I mean, I've had, in life, I mean, we go through seasons and everything changes. One of the biggest ones that I can think about in this respect is going from being an employee to being a boss, my own boss, from having a boss to being the boss. And the funny thing is that even when I was employed, I never felt like that's where I was supposed to be. Even when I went to graduate school, I knew I was going to graduate school, but most people were going to graduate school because they wanted to get a job at this first, this corporation, at this law firm, etc. But that was never my perspective. I always knew that I wanted to be in business for myself. I always knew that I wanted to be in charge and dictate my schedule and my time and my family experience. But it was something that had to change in me when I went from having a boss to being the boss. And so with that comes, stress. It comes making decisions, standing on your decisions, knowing why you're deciding it, not just working in your business, but working on your business, enjoying it. In life, that transformation may be, a part of, as you're trying to figure out your way and where you fit. You may have times where you feel like you're stuck as a wife or a mother. And you've got to figure out, as you are making these changes and these shifts, how everything else in your life, how it has to have to be molded in order for everything to fit again. And that's a part of that transformation process. And yeah, I don't know if I could say it any other way. So number 2 is to give yourself permission to experience the process of transformation. Okay. Number 3 is give yourself permission to experience infinite love. Now this one, I kind of got an A and a B. And what I mean by that is not just love as in I love myself, but I think it's an unconditional love. When you're stepping into a new space, I think I don't just think, I'm convinced that puts you in a ground where not only are you uncomfortable, but you can see a lot of what we may consider our faults, our hang-ups, our shortcomings. All of those things sort of rush in and they stick really close to you in that space, because in the beginning you haven't had enough successes in that new space to kind of plant you a little bit. As a knitter, my past successes had been in crocheting. I could think something and just make it. I could see it and I could just make it. Now, am I talking about some uber complicated? Well, for any of you who follow my channel for any length of time, that's just not my lane. I can do them, but that's just, I like stuff that I can just do and it just flows. And so when I really decided that I was going to dig into knitting, it was so hard. It was awful. It was awful, and it seemed like it takes forever to do. But that was because I had not had any successes in knitting, other than knitting a very ugly and messed up swatch. So, in that space, a lot of insecurities or wanting to quit just kind of flooded in. I'll go back to what I know. I'll just crochet this or that. And that's why for some of my subbies, I have to kind of apologize, because for a while I really was focused on knitting because I did not like the feel of not wanting to follow through on my project. And to me, it's something totally different, even though it may be the same. We're not going to go there today. It's something totally different to put something to the side to go back to later than to quit. You know, like there's some projects that you can have and you work on for years and you just always go back to them when you feel like going back to them. But there's something different to just say, ugh, I quit, I don't want to do it. And that was a feeling that was coming over me more frequently than I was comfortable with residing within my life. And so that's why I kind of just took it by the horns. And so now I feel more comfortable and now I want to up it. But the point was that when I was in that new space, I hadn't experienced any good things. I hadn't made anything that looked like something I would actually wear in public. So it challenged me and it pushed me. So what I want to say about this space is that, you know, the reason why I couch it as love is because you just got to love on yourself on your good days and on your bad days. And the kind of part B of this is that you got to kind of have some grace in it too. You know, grace, we hear about grace a lot when it comes to the grace that God has extended to mankind. But sometimes we've got to extend grace to ourselves and know that we mess up and know that we're not perfect, but we're trying. And not in a way that you're giving yourself permission or as a cop-out, because it's going to be hard. It will be hard. It will be difficult. And if it's not hard and it's not difficult, newsflash, I'm going to give you this one for free. You didn't pick a hard enough goal. You didn't dig deep enough for the goal if it's easy. You just didn't, because you just didn't. I'm not going to explain. You just didn't, okay? So go back and revamp it and come back. Or just stay and go back, okay? But in that, for me, it means that quitting is not an option, even though you're extending grace to yourself and you're loving on yourself in the meantime. Quitting is not an option. But it may mean that you just got to make room for forgiveness for yourself. And sometimes, using that same example of, you know, creating new projects, sometimes we just got to pull out the yarn and start over. You know, it's not quitting, it's not giving up, it's just starting over. And I think that's perfectly acceptable when you are doing it in the right perspective and the right frame of mind. And only you can know when you've reached that point where, hey, this is not working. But usually in the beginning, it's too soon to make that determination, because everything can mean I'm going to quit. Because it all feels uncomfortable and it all feels like, what am I doing? Am I sure? Why did I choose this? I must be crazy. Why did I tell people I was going to do this? Right? That's your mind speaking to you, okay? And so with this, and make, just know, the third one is to just give yourself permission to really just to experience infinite love and to extend grace to yourself. And in that time, be your number one supporter. I mean, if someone else is supporting you and you thought, oh, they're my number one fan, they should be number two. You should be your number one supporter. And, helping yourself just move past, I don't want to say push, but sometimes we do have to push that uncomfortable space. And the reality is, you'll start and you'll be in that uncomfortable space. And then you'll move past it. And then you'll feel okay. And then you'll have another goal. And then you'll go back into another uncomfortable space. It's not the same as the one here, but it's a new one. But the wonderful thing about when we get to this second uncomfortable space, or the third or fourth, because this is a wash, rinse, repeat type of thing, is that by that time you would have had the success of getting through the first uncomfortable space to help counteract being in that new space. Does that make sense? At least I hope it does. Okay. So that's number 3. Number 4 is give yourself permission to experience success. I know you're thinking, but Dana, that's why I said I wanted to do it. No, not really. I don't think that's always the same thing as giving yourself permission to experience success. And I'm going to tell you why. When we give ourselves permission to experience success, we will begin making sure that everything around us accommodates that. Number one, that the permission to to experience this new phase. Number 2, the permission to go through that transformation process. Number 3, to extend grace to yourself and to love on yourself. And number 3 is really to just have the success. When you do those things, you begin to shape and mold your environment and yourself to experience success. Now here's the kicker. This is not time to clam up. You cannot freeze. You can't quit. You have to know that it's going to take time, which is why the B side is going to be on time management, because it's not going to happen overnight. And if it did, here's the reality of when we experience what may be deemed overnight success. You get there and you're excited and you're overjoyed, but you have not quite acquired the skills to maintain or to allow that success to springboard to bigger things. So overnight, on one hand, seems really cool, but you would be able to do more with it if you really establish a strong foundation and allow that foundation to be then built into a frame and built into the sides and built into the roof. It's like if you decided to do a pop-up tent versus a structured home, a physical home, okay? And so I'm going to repeat all of these before we get to the time management. Number 1 is give yourself permission to have this experience. Number 2, give yourself permission to experience the process of transformation. Number 3 is give yourself permission to experience infinite love, and in that I was saying extending grace to yourself. Be forgiving of yourself and allow yourself room and elbow room and space to grow, okay? And number 4 is give yourself permission to experience success. And so with that, I want to say one last little caveat to the last one before I talk about time management. When we talk about success, right now I'm really thinking about your mindset, your environment, we may talk about your goals and structuring a plan. But what I don't want us to get caught up on is just the stuff, right? Tools and gadgets, and those things will come. But I think if we make sure that we have that foundation, with a solid foundation, it's sturdy, it's made with concrete, and I don't know how to build a house, but I understand that that's needed, then we won't get thrown off by things that may seem like shiny objects that distract us from the main focus, which is establishing ourselves, going through the process of accomplishing that goal, or going through the steps of what we believe will allow us to accomplish that goal. And I hope all that makes sense. So now to time management. I'm going to tell you what I do. And I can't remember who asked me, so forgive me. I have tried everything. But what I've learned, now probably not everything in the world, of course, right? But what I've learned is that for every season in my life, something different was needed in order for me to effectively manage my time. Okay? One of the things which was a big milestone for me in my life was I went to undergrad after being married and having children. So I was a freshman in college with two young children, two children under the age of 3. Well, all three, no, three, all of them were under 5. All three were under 5. And it was hard. It was difficult. But it was something that I truly wanted to do. I still had to work full time. And I attended school full time. And my husband worked full time. And we had 3 children. Okay? My commute to school was 45 minutes to an hour each way. 3 to 4 days, sometimes 5 a week, depending on the semester. Okay? I'm saying all this to say what I needed to do then to effectively manage my time was different from when I went to graduate school, and my first year I just went to school. And I still had my kids, I still had other obligations, but the obligations were not as great. But the curriculum requirement and the education requirement of grad school took up the space where all those other activities did in my undergrad, okay? Compared to now. Now, I have probably just as much intellectually, more physically that I must do. But because I have flexibility, it's not the same as those 2 other pivotal times, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying in all of that is each one of those times in my life dictated something different. But I think I can tell you some things that are true regardless of either of those situations. Number 1, find out when you are most effective. Are you an early riser? I remember in grad school, I used to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to study. I had to study on a fresh brain. I had to sleep first, then study. My house had to be quiet, but I had to leave the house by 6:30 in order to make it to class on time because of my commute. And so that meant I had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so, but that was what was most effective for me. Now I get a toss-up. Some seasons, I do really well with waking up early in the morning, not 3. It may be 5:30. But my commute is 2 minutes to my computer if I'm walking slow, minus coffee, okay? And some of my morning tasks that I need to do, I actually don't even do on a computer. So it's really about getting up, getting my cup of coffee, getting my tea, and starting my day. So I still had to do that first thing, which was fine, what was most effective for me. Number two, get everything else to be shaped around when you're most effective. So that means I usually establish that core thing first and then do everything else around it. This is hard if you're a person that you have a job and you want to go back to school, or you have a family and you're a stay-at-home mom, but you want to write a book, or you want to do more crafting or sell your crafts or do those types of things. And all of those things are time-consuming things. So what you do is have to establish your main thing first, your priority things first, and then figure out how you're going to do it around that main thing. Number three, now I'm better at this sometimes than others, but schedule it. Everything that's important, schedule. Now, there's some people that schedule by time, meaning I'm going to wake up at 6, from 6 to 7, I'm going to do this, from 8 to 9, I'm going to do that, I'm going to 10 to 11, I'm going to do this. What I would say, if that is you, create a schedule, stick to it for, make a time frame that you want to stick to it, 4 to 6 weeks, and then reevaluate whether it's working. Sometimes I do not have to go 6 weeks to know that this is not working, okay? If you are a person that does time, 6 to 7, 8 to 9, make sure you schedule in breaks. Make sure in the beginning also that you jot down how much time that you actually spent on the task. Because sometimes we'll do 6 to 7, but we'll look up and it's 8:30. Even though we scheduled it for 1 hour, it really took us 2.5 hours. And you need to know that. So when you adjust your schedule, that you are really being realistic with the amount of time that it takes to accomplish a given task. One of the areas where I'm extremely poor in doing this is with my crafting. I cannot tell you how many hours it takes to make anything knitting. Now, I can with crochet. I could probably guesstimate how much for just about any project it will take me to do that. Haven't quite got there. I could tell you, but I don't like that amount of time because I feel like it's forever, but it is what it is. And so I cannot go by maybe saying that I want to get to a certain place in a project, but I can with my crafting say a certain amount of time, and then making sure that as I watch the close of that time that I get to a good stopping place in my project. And that's the compromise that I've had to do. So that's for the first person if you're a time scheduler. Then there's other people where you just go by the tasks that you need to complete in a day. If you're that person, then what I would strongly suggest is you still have to record those tasks. There are some tasks when I do that, and I use index cards. I have a note on my phone that I keep. Now, I still have the checklist, but for some reason, I like the notes. I like the paper. This, when I'm out doing my errands, I will literally put them in order. I'll put what I need to do at each place. I'll slide it in my back pocket, and it's with me at every stop so that I am ensured to accomplish what I need to accomplish when I'm doing outside things, or if there are some things that I need to add to my calendar and I don't have the time at that moment to do it. So that means that I keep index cards like this almost everywhere. They're in my tote bag, they're in my craft bag, they're not in my purse because my phone is usually with me if I'm carrying my purse. I have a stack of them here on my desk. I have a stack of them next to my nightstand by my bed with the pen, a highlighter. So that if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, I jot it down, I go back to sleep, and when I wake up in the morning, I process it in whatever way I need to do my index cards. And that works for me, okay? And so if you're a person that does it by tasks, you should write them down. And I would also say the same thing with evaluation. Once you establish that system, evaluate how effective that is for you. And maybe you should plan some of your core things, and you can do your other tasks by completing them, if that makes sense. And I'm a hybrid. I am a hybrid. My big things, I schedule. Everything else, I kind of put it in finishing it by the end of the week type of thing. This is like the marathon video, but I'm going to show you another example about this. I'm trying to get something that doesn't like have. Okay, I'm going to show you this. Okay, this is a good one. I have a binder where once I write out all my goals for the year, I print them up and I put them in a binder. And that binder, I have like an overview of all the things, like the high points of what I'd like to do for the year. And then I have each month broken down. And not like these little small details, but really like not an airplane view, but like a helicopter view of the terrain. So here's an example. You cannot see this, but you can kind of see how I have it broken down, and I have it broken down by compartments: business development, content development, reader outreach, writing, and this is all just for January. I have a focus for the month, and I kind of give myself in a summary of what my focus is for January. For me, this month is about establishing new habits. And so I talk a little bit about that and why that's important. And I just do this in a paragraph. Nobody reads this but me and my accountability buddy. This is actually the one that I send to my accountability buddy. And then I have the general overview of what my goals are, and not broken down into small details, but the high view. Like for this month, I want to read 2 books, and I want to record this. I want to record this video, and I didn't put this specific video, but that how many videos I wanted to record this month. Okay, and so that is what I have for January. And then on the detail page for my week, I have it broken down by day and what tasks have to be done. And this is actually my blogging schedule. But the point is, I mean, that may seem very, very detailed, and I'm sorry because y'all may be falling asleep on me. But the point is, figure out what works for you. And if it doesn't, I don't want to say if it doesn't work. And if you have been doing one and not the other, and you're finding that so far it's not working, try the other. You really, again, it's about that back to what we were just talking about of giving yourself permission to have this experience. And part of the experience is that you have to get the work done. And so how can you best get the work done? I'm going to show you one last view, and again, you won't see it in detail, but I'm hoping that in that you would be able to just get an idea. You can't see it, but here in my, I don't have my iPad anymore. In my calendar, I have everything in, like the things that need to be in my schedule that are blocked in. And even though sometimes I have to shift it, but it's in my schedule. I try my best not to shift, but shifts happen. And I put my appointments. Okay, so number 1 is, find when you're most productive. Number 2 is, try to schedule everything around that. And if you're a person that you need to do it by times, those are some suggestions for that. If you're someone that you rather do it by task, do it by that. In the end, when you do either way, I would suggest that you have some sort of a manageable time as far as when you will evaluate your schedule, as well as when you will review your schedule. I review my schedule every night before the next day. I also review my schedule and make changes to my schedule once a week or as need to, based on client needs or based on timing changes or shifts with the kids and that type of thing. And then the overall view of my schedule, I try to look at that at least every month or so. If I feel like I'm being very productive, I still think about it and move on. If I'm not being productive, I'll look at maybe things that I think I can change and try to make those adjustments. This last thing is going to be for anybody, if you have a family I mean, everybody is a part of a family, whether it's by blood or it's by heart. You have a family. And one of the things that establishing a schedule and effectively managing your time will do is to show your family that this is important to you. If you make the schedule and you determine here's the time and space when I do these things, then that allows everybody to move and function and coexist with these new goals or these new habits. And one of the biggest things for our household is that in the morning I have my quiet time, and it's not necessarily always quiet. I mean, listen to music. I pray. I read. I crochet while I pray, and I drink my coffee. And usually it's very quiet and still for me. So much so that even in those times, the only time that my family will come in and check on me is usually to see if I, if I need my coffee refilled, or if I need water, if I'm working for a long time and I haven't come out. And so, but that's because we've established that in our household. And so once you do that and you have that effective time management, I cannot believe this is 45 minutes. Then everybody else in your life can come around and help to, I think, further substantiate what you want to do. You all asked for this. I know. I'm going to index this video in the description box because this is super long, way longer than I anticipated. I hope that this has been helpful. We talked about what the permissions are that you need to have in your life in order to get back on track or to establish those new goals in your life, or to create that a space of success, which I've been talking to you about. And we also talked about time management. I hope that this has been helpful. If you have questions, because I'm sure even though I covered this in 46 minutes, it's like it can go on forever. And I'm doing this all because, in closing, I watched the sermon today during my quiet time. And one of the things that the pastor said, which was so like mind-blowing for me, is he said that when you die, you want to die empty. You want to die finished. That everything that God is giving you, your gifts, your talents, your desires, your goals, all those things have been accomplished. And so I am really convinced that that's the way I want to live my life. And he put words to what I was feeling. Now, Lord, I don't want to be, empty today. But I do want it so that as I make progress and as I take those steps, that I am fully given of myself, that I am totally invested and tapped into the experience, that I am willing to make adjustments and changes, but that it's not about just being, but it's about living, and living in the way that I believe that I should live my life. And that's why it's about, dying empty. And when you give yourself these permissions, when you allow yourself to experience this change and the transformation, when you love yourself with infinite love and established grace, you are giving yourself permission, you're giving your space, the people in your life, a notice that I'm about business, that I'm about getting my purpose and my work done. And I honestly don't think that every single task is this make or break life decision task. But I do believe that every task can strengthen or weaken that resolve. And so it's kind of like it is a make or break moment. I mean, even doing this. I mean, I'm doing it for you, but I'm doing it for me. And it's about reaffirming what it is that I am welcoming into my life and what it is that needs to stay on the outside, because I don't have the space, the tolerance, or the capacity to deal with it. Okay? So with that said, have a fantastic weekend. I will be back with the Yarn Crafters chat soon. It will not be today. And Please let me know if there are any other topics that you would like for me to cover on the dream chasing installments. They will not normally be this long. I just don't think so. But I knew this one was going to be like this because it was in my head before some of the other ones. But I thought it was important now. And the reason why it's important now is because if we want to be on target, we've got to be aligned, just like that GPS system. If you want to get a good pinpoint of where you are, you've got to, it has to be aligned with the satellite. There has to be no obstruction. Just like if you're using your cell phone and you're inside this concrete building, or if you're in Houston and you're underneath the tunnels and your phone doesn't work, it's because that concrete is blocking the ability for your phone to reach that satellite or that tower in order for it to function appropriately. And so we want to make sure that our energies and our efforts are being used in the most high capacity possible, so that we will live in a space of empty, that we're giving it our all. And so that regardless of whether you're doing it for one, or you're doing it for 50, or you're doing it for thousands, you will be totally satisfied with what you've done. And not just with what you've done, but how you've used what you've been given and how you've been a good steward. Okay? So that is it. I am tapped out and tired. Tell me what your greatest tip is for time management. And I would also love to know, what is one of the permissions that you have to give yourself in order to accomplish some of your goals this year? Okay? So those two questions, I'm going to try my best to put them in the description box so you won't forget. And as always, thank you so much for your support. I look forward to interacting with you all in the comment section. And take care. And I hopefully will speak with you sooner than later. Goodbye.